Welcome to 122 and an eighth. This is the Cowabunga Chronicles. I'm your resident sewer rat, Chris, joined by
Nolan.
And we are here to explore the sewers of the TMNT IDW collection. This is Volume 4, Donatello. Awesome. Let's get right into it, Nolan. What do you think?
This volume, from what I gather, you probably didn't like it as much as me, but I loved it. It might be my favorite of the volumes.
I call this volume where shit gets weird. Like, it definitely leans into like the fantastical a bit more, and different realms and time travel and all these things more than the previous ones. Like, if like 1, 2, 3.5-ish, so to say, we're a little bit more grounded. I know this just kind of leans more into it. I think it did it very well. There are a couple of issues, take it or leave it, but this felt like the universe expanding in this volume more than the others.
Yeah, I can see that.
Let's hop right into it. So the gang, all of the gang, right, just had their showdown with Shredder, and they've decided to hightail it out of the city, kind of beaten and bruised, so to say. And that brings us right into issue 29, is where this volume starts out. And they go to the ever-fabled TMNT farmhouse, right? Straight out of the old comic, straight out of the movie, which I think I mentioned in a previous episode. That's like a real place. The farmhouse in the movie actually exists just outside of Wilmington, North Carolina. They actually do like showings of the movie there and stuff, and they open it up to people every once in a while. It's pretty cool.
I vaguely remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I haven't been, but I've seen pictures and things like that. You can look it up online. But really funny, they just go upstate, and this doesn't really matter for storytelling and whatnot, but they mention, I think Mikey mentioned that they lived in Albany. She said, "Oh, I thought your parents lived in Albany." He said to April, "I thought your parents lived in Albany." When you're in New York City, there's many definitions of upstate in New York. Some people think that just like Westchester County, which is the first county outside of the Bronx, or White Plains and Westchester is upstate. But for most people in New York, like north of Albany, so to say, is like upstate. So I thought that was kind of funny. And they actually don't even end up in New York. They end up in Northampton, Massachusetts.
I didn't even realize where they were. Yeah,
so it says in Northampton. Yeah. And it might be in issue 30, but again, it doesn't really matter for the storytelling kind of thing. Yeah. Northampton's kind of funny because I've actually been there. And it's presented as like a farm town and things like that, and it's not really a farm town, but Northampton is actually where Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman spent some time together and kind of met, and then I think they moved to Dover or something like that in New Hampshire. So it's just kind of interesting to see that place that Ben grew up going to, kind of thing. And I'll get to another thing later on the highway, which is kind of funny. So, yeah, so they're at the farmhouse upstate. They're kind of thrown in the barn, so to say, up the road from the farmhouse that April's parents are living in. They're all worn out from the battle, like we said, broken and bruised, Splinter's leg still broken, and they need to hide out in the barn. Donnie seems to start to understand like the brainwashing with Leo is pretty serious and tries to explain that to the other. Raphael goes to wake Leo, and this is the main conflict of this issue, really, is Raphael goes to wake Leo, and he wakes very aggressively and kind of storms off. So you can tell that like Leo's still up and down from the brainwashing. And as he storms off, he comes upon a very injured, kind of worn down Alopex. So Raphael immediately is ready to attack, but Leo stops him. They begin to fight, but Splinter stops them, saying that he forbids it. And Alopex is saying that she doesn't want to fight. Like, she's not there to fight. She no longer is a part of the Foot anymore, especially after Alopex, went after Shredder. So Splinter kind of honors the truce. Leo calls Splinter Hamato, which was very interesting. A very interesting choice of words. Not father, not master. Calls him Hamato and kind of walks off. And Alopex joins him. And you get these really sad scenes of Leo looking to his mother, Shen, for help.
The way you said that reminded me of Psycho.
Oh.
Looking to mother.
Yeah. Yeah. But I say that because that's what he's calling out for. Yeah. And then we have a quick aside, but very important, that Casey ends up meeting April's parents. April's father has had a stroke. And we find out that he worked at StockGen, and that's how April got the internship. April mentions the ooze to her mother, but says she has something to show her. So that kind of rounds out the issue. And frankly, I thought that was a great introduction to this new setting and where they're at. And so when they're thinking about like dividing these issues up, like this kind of makes sense in the arc. But what did you think?
I thought it was a great start. The Alopex stuff was very unexpected. Well, her turning wasn't unexpected, but her being there was unexpected. And the introduction of Casey to April's parents was pretty fun.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting, and he was trying to be very respectful, but he's like, sorry, sir, or something like that. He says, call me John. That was kind of interesting. The Alopex arc over the next few issues was interesting to me because you thought it was going to go one way and it goes another. I won't go too much into it at the moment, but I thought that was really interesting to see. But I don't know how I feel about how it pays off. But we'll get to more of that later.
And I feel like we haven't got the full payoff though, so it could be different by the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that is one thing I'm kind of learning through this is they jam a lot into these issues in general, but they are picking. They can only do so much.
Yeah.
And so, if last volume was like, where's Krang, right? Well, we find that out in this volume, right? And we find out where Shredder is. And we have some introduction of new characters, right? So we have our first issue in this volume that is the outside of the main series, that is Utrum Empire #1. So this starts with, it's kind of dark. It starts with Fugitoid trying to end himself so that Krang can't get to his brain. And then it quickly jumps to the history of kind of the Utrum Empire. I'm going to go out and just start by saying some of this confused me because all the Krangs look the same, right? Like all of the Utrums look similar, and it's very hard to understand the names and place them for me a little bit. I don't know why. That could be just me a little bit.
I could see that. I feel like the only one that was distinct was Krang's dad.
Quanon. Or whatever, Quanon or something like that.
I didn't remember any of their names.
Yeah.
To be honest.
But that was the only one, really. And there was Korra or something like that. But so really to summarize, Utrum has been spreading itself too thin across the galaxy after already winning a war. And that's where the really internal debate and struggle comes on.
I feel like a lot happens in the Utrum Empire, and yet it's not much.
It's mildly inconsequential to the overall story.
Was this the first time we see the Triceratons?
I was going to say that. Yeah, the first time we see the Triceratons and the introduction of Zog, which I think the very, very first introduction outside the series was in the Mirage. I think it was 7 or something like that.
Because I felt like their inclusion was a little strange to me, because not to say that they weren't there.
Sure.
But it just felt weird to me that they were there, so prevalent in that empire.
So what I got out of their introduction here, and then it sort of pays off later in another way, is I feel like they're laying the groundwork for this is someone else against Krang completely, and that maybe eventually, I really don't know, but maybe eventually, like, they somehow make contact and, like, align with Zog. They align with the neutrinos, like these kind of things.
I could see that.
So
I just didn't get the impression that the Triceratons were involved prior to this.
sure.
I could have just missed something. Maybe
Yeah, I don't
this is
think
just
so.
a retcon, but
Something really interesting, though, about Zog, real quick, or the Triceratons. If you've seen Mutant Mayhem, there's a scene early on in the film where there's like a U-Haul looking truck. And if you think of, like, picture a U-Haul truck, you see those big postage stamps or postcards on the side that have, like, the location from where that truck was from and whatnot. We are not sponsored by them in any way, by the way. But if you watch the film, you'll actually see the Triceraton on the side. Oh. You'll see Zog on the side of the U-Haul there. It's a nice little Easter egg in Mutant Mayhem. So, in any event, Zog or the Triceratons are leading the attack on Krang. Then we hop back to Burn now. Stockman breaks Fugitoid out. Stockman doesn't seem to know that Fugitoid was Chet. Chet was Fugitoid. Also Professor Honeycutt. They were all one and the same. Some kind of trinity or something like that. So he wants him to help. And we cut to Donnie looking for Chet's journal that April stole from StockGen, as I was saying, in Northampton. And then Fugitoid seems to think that him and Stockman are working together to destroy the Technodrome, but they are actually heading to drain the ooze of the Utroms. So the Utroms are in stasis, using the ooze to basically keep them alive in stasis while Krang terraforms the Earth, makes it safe for Utroms to live again. The Fugitoid has this moment where he's debating on whether he should just run away and let Stockman destroy or basically perform genocide on the Utroms. And this issue ends with deciding to actually knock Stockman out. What'd you think of that issue?
I thought it was good. It wasn't... At that point, I was really into the stuff with the turtles at the farm, so it kind of took me out. I got used to it as it went along, but...
Sure.
It was a good issue. I feel like nothing super consequential happens until, like, the last issue of the mini...
of the Utrom Empire series, yeah, I could see that. And to your point on these side issues, right? The luxury and the best part about the IDW collection is putting together all of these issues in their chronological order, right?
Yeah.
However, it does hop you in and out of the story as you're reading the pages, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing overall, right? It's a net positive. But kind of to your point, I think, like, it was one of our first recordings where I was just like, these 4 issues just annoyed me because I just wanted to hear more about the Turtles. And I have to slog through these 4 issues to get to hearing more about the Turtles. And so I think that's, as you say that, I think those were the words that I was looking for, a few episodes ago.
Yeah, it's a good issue. I don't think...
I mean, what a twist, though. I mean, what'd you think of the twist at the end of him deciding to knock Stockman out?
I was not expecting that. His reason makes sense. I think his reason makes enough sense, though I could see it coming back to bite him.
Right.
Eventually.
It felt like the way it was depicted, it felt like a very, like, AI reasoning with itself kind of thing, more than like a person, because this is supposed to be like somebody's being, or like this is supposed to be like a person inside this android, right? The Fugitoid. And I thought he dealt with it very clinically, but maybe it's the scientific part of him kind of, I guess, hopping in.
There could be argument, not to make an argument in support of genocide,
right?
But there could be argument made that Krang becoming more vengeful will make him more sloppy, which would then
Sure.
make him easier to defeat.
I think that was his argument, right? That was Stockman's argument
Yeah.
too. Yeah. So, super interesting. Twist there.
But full disclosure, don't do genocide. Not
No,
cool.
we would knock you out.
Yeah. And we at this podcast, we at the arcade, anti-genocide. Just putting that out there.
Yeah. No canceling here. So cool. Issue 30. Raph finds Alopex stalking Leo and confronts her about it. She explains that Shredder's mind games are intense. If she wanted to kill Leo, she would have already. You hear Leo calling out for Shen for help, trying to understand where he is in all of this. And you have Donnie caring for Splinter, but sort of feeling lost on his own, not being able to work with gadgets and work on the Technodrome problem. He's through this whole volume, frankly, he's very fixated on the Technodrome problem, more so than Shredder. Leo gets a visit from Mother eventually. Shen says that he's found what he's lost, but to proceed slowly as to not be overwhelmed. So I thought that was kind of an interesting choice of words or language there. And we have April's father. We find out that April's father worked on the mutagen at StockGen, and that her mother was a reporter. I thought that was an interesting little nod to that history. And her mother, I forget her mother's name, but I know it's John is the father, had his laptop. And then there was another really great moment now with Donnie really connecting with Leo, gets him to come back to the barn. And Shen then goes straight from visiting Leo. She has a lot of appointments for someone who's not alive, but she goes to visit Splinter, tells him he's not a failure and that love will overcome all the evil in Leo. And this is the issue that I think they did some of the most creative storytelling, because everything that I just mentioned here was done using this motif of Mikey writing a letter to Woody in New York City about how people are, they're feeling down and out, they're feeling separated, they're feeling very lonely in a lot of ways. And he finishes his letter saying that he has a way to bring everybody around a fire with basically through food, and they actually welcome Alopex into that fire, into that conversation.
Elizabeth is her name.
Thank you. Oh, we found it. This is like these, like I said, this motif of him writing a letter to Woody, him like connecting with his only friend, making sure he's okay, but telling that whole story. But this issue does end with a brand new character, which is Koya. We find out that the name, and it's this falcon mutant bird thing, and it ends with him saying that they have found their prey, and you can tell that they are working for Karai and the Foot.
Yeah, she directly mentions Karai.
Yes, at that moment. What'd you think of this issue?
I thought it was a really good issue. I did sort of wonder, how was he going to get the letter to Woody?
Sure.
I did wonder that, but it's not that important.
Sure.
But I did really like the letter to Woody. I thought it was a good issue.
Just a very different, interesting storytelling device that we hadn't really seen yet. And to that point, the writing across this, there are a lot of scenes, we've talked about it before. I'll probably say this every podcast, episode, but there's all these jumps between scenes, right? But the way they connect these scenes are very interesting, because they'll say a line that applies to the ending of one scene, but it's actually the start of the other scene on the next page or something like that. And I found that really interesting. I feel like they really leaned into that in this volume across, and the letter kind of started it. So from there, we move back into Utrom, the Utrom Empire. So we find out the Fugitoid's motivations to stopping Stockman is to not commit genocide, as we talked about. And he figures out that the only way to save the Utroms would be to actually go to Krang. And then we cut to the Utronium history a little bit more. Krang arrives to see his father, Quanin, I think. Quanin. And the execution of a captured Zog. Quanin doesn't want war to ever end. Krang says that it needs to, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing because you thought Krang was just like all war all the time. That's all he really thinks about. Go ahead.
Krang felt very different to me.
He did in these past, right?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. We do see the connection though. I think like there is a bridge at the end here, but while they're debating, Zog escapes, and Quanin and Krang actually kind of join in on the attack, and Zog just kind of picks up Krang and holds a gun to him like he's like a watermelon, basically, and at gunpoint basically makes his escape. Back on Burn now, Krang is now out in a hurricane to fix the generator outside, to fix the ooze for keeping the Utroms in stasis. And it's at that point, while Krang is outside, Stockman barges in with his, search and destroy fly, Superfly, so to say. And he attacks the Fugitoid. He ends up losing, and hits Stockman and tells him not to underestimate him. I thought that was a really interesting line for the Fugitoid to get like that aggressive with Stockman. We jump quickly to Donnie reading the journal, and finds, or Chet's journal, as they know it, finds that the power grid and the self-destruct for the Technodrome is in that journal, like the plans for it. We go back to Burn now, and Krang gets the connection together outside in the hurricane, but it ends up zapping him and throwing him off. Back in our Utromian history, Zog gets away in Krang's ship and then throws him overboard as he's making his escape. And Quanin visiting Krang in the hospital, Krang says that he should have let him die, and all that matters is the Utrom race. I thought that was an interesting moment there. So I'm sensing the same, like a lot happens and not a lot happens, so to say, in this issue. But that it is very important, the information found in the journal, right?
Yeah, I feel like this series has a lot of really good moments and then a lot of just kind of filler.
Sure.
I really like the moment where Fugitoid goes and tells Krang, like, they kind of like, you're broken out, and Fugitoid was like, either your whole race you come with me, or your whole race dies. And I like how immediately it's just like, all right,
that's it.
Yep, that's just.
And then it links to like him telling his father, all that matters is the race.
Yeah,
and
I thought a lot of that stuff was interesting, but like I said, I feel like there was a way you could have just thrown in the Donnie getting that information without it, but it was all right.
Awesome. Let's get into issue 31 here. We're moving right along. We got Casey and Donnie starting to fix a motorcycle. Why are they fixing a motorcycle? I have no idea. We find out that motorcycle ends up pretty important later, but
Such a cool moment.
It is reminiscent though of the movie, right, where they're fixing the truck, right, or the van in the garage, right. So this time it's just a motorcycle. We cut to Alapex opening up to Raph about the foot just being a place to belong. And Raph shares that he felt the same in some ways of, never giving up on a place to, that he would eventually belong. She jokes about how boring Tai Chi is because it was interesting to me seeing Raphael practicing Tai Chi, which I thought was like Raphael actually taking serious his like rude but cool, right? Cool but rude thing. So in any event, they end up play fighting, which I thought was kind of interesting. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say it could be sort of a throwback to the issue last volume where Splinter disguises as that guy and does different
Right.
styles, and it's like you need to try
Unlearning things. Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
Did you say Raphael or did you say Leonardo?
I think it was all of them.
Wasn't it No, I mean, wasn't it Leonardo who was talking to Alepex?
No, this was Raphael and Alepex talking about them finding their camaraderie and like their shared experience of like feeling alone and looking for belonging and that kind of thing, because they do end up doing this like play fighting kind of thing, which I thought was interesting.
I just thought I remembered Leonardo doing Tai Chi. Maybe I'm gonna trust you. I trust you.
All good. We do see Leo meditating more and training a bit as well. And Splinter confronts him, tells him that it was Shredder who failed because Leo did not draw blood, and that out of respect for Shen, they need to stick together. I thought that was a really interesting moment, evoking Shen and really communicating to him that, Shredder was the one who failed. April reveals to Casey that she has a bit of mutagen. She has a mutagen vial, but it only has a healing compound. And initially she wants to use it on Casey for his stomach, stab and dash with Shredder, or Splinter's broken leg. But Casey explains, I thought it was a really interesting moment, like that I think he says something like, him and I were brawlers. We get broken, we heal. And then they eventually both agree that they should use it on her dad, who has had that stroke.
Just a quick minute. I'm thinking of what happens right after with Splinter and
Yes.
Leo, because Leo's training, so
Yes.
that's what I was thinking of.
Exactly.
And also, I just want to point out, the cover for issue 31 is fantastic. I don't know if you'll remember it, but it's like a Splinter looking at Leo, and them it's a really nice cover.
I'm gonna grab. I like the. I will say I like 30 as well. Him writing, Michelangelo writing the
note.
The note there. I thought that was really cool. Let's see here. 31. We do sit here with the books, folks, right in front of us for reference. But I am not finding it.
I have it right here.
Oh, look at that. Oh, yeah. It almost reminds me of like Stan Sakai, right? I think his name is. A little bit. Like just kind of reminiscent of that style.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. You bring up an interesting point, though, with the illustration. Let me just finish this issue, but don't let me forget that one point, because so they agree to use it on their dad, and they cut to everyone sitting, all the Turtles, Splinter, and Alopex sitting in the barn. Splinter shares that he stole the mutagen for Hobb, and there's kind of disagreement about his methods or motivations for doing that. And it's at that moment that the Koya, the Falcon mutant, breaks into the barn to ambush them with foot assassins, which look a lot different than your regular old like foot soldiers, so to say. It's in the middle of this battle that Raphael notices Alopex kind of frozen and slinking away, chases after her, saying that she led them there. The assassins are about to gain the upper hand on Splinter, Donnie, and Mikey, and they're about to kill Splinter, and that is when Leo arrives. So that is the end of issue 31. Your thoughts there?
I really like this issue. I like the moment between. I like the opening with Casey and Mikey fixing the bike. I really like that.
Is that Mikey or Donnie?
Donnie.
I wrote Donnie in case.
You're right. You're right.
Okay, cool. Oof. I was like, wait a second. So something I was going to bring up.
That makes more sense. I was like, why would Mikey be doing that? But yeah,
Right.
yeah. But yeah, I really like that. Was it this issue? You may have mentioned it, and I was completely spacing because I was looking for something. But was it this issue that April finds out about StockGen being destroyed?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And they couldn't tell why, like how it happened or why it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have left that out of my notes.
That's what ultimately leads. Is that what leads?
Oh, I think it was when they first met.
Oh, yeah.
When they first met the parents, that's when they found that out.
Because that's what leads to her mom telling the history of what happened. Okay, yeah.
Yes. So the one thing I really wanted to bring up, just a bit aside of, we every once in a while we talk about the art, we talk about the animation style, and what we like and what we don't like. I, in my brain, have dubbed this style of the turtles Cankle Turtles. Because I have no clue why these are the biggest calves I have ever seen on any animal in my life. And I'm not sure why. Did you notice that? Is that just me?
I noticed something weird. I feel like I even saved like a picture of it or something, because there was something weird with the art that I noticed when I was reading. Let's see. Maybe it was, yeah, something like that. There was definitely some weirdness to the art.
In my brain, I call them the Cankle Turtles. So I apologize if this podcast has somehow, some way made it to the artists.
I don't think it's bad. It's
just different. Yeah, it's just different. So
also this volume, we see a lot of the turtles without their bandanas.
A lot, and their scarves instead of bandanas. Somehow they're like wearing a scarf or something.
Yeah, I guess the bandanas magically turn into scarves when they're not on their face.
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed something weird with their hands at one point when Raph was talking to Alopex, where it's very blocky or something. I can't remember. I can't find the picture I saved, but yeah.
It doesn't take you out of the world or anything like that, but it was just a moment where I was like, this feels a little weird.
Well, yeah, this is the picture.
Yeah. It's Popeye forearms kind of thing. Yeah. What did you see what page that was by any chance?
That was page 58.
58.
So 58. If you're looking along,
follow along at home. Yeah. You can see what we're talking about. We're gonna hop into issue 32 because it took. We had a cliffhanger. We had to read 2 issues, and now we're going to actually hear about that fight in the barn. How do you feel about that happening? I sometimes feel like the cliffhanger, they like milked that cliffhanger for like 2 issues a little bit. You're like, oh yeah, by the way, they were just attacked.
Yeah. I'm okay with it. Okay. I'm so used to it with comics.
Sure.
That doesn't bother me.
All right. Sometimes you're just like, oh, that's so cute, Chris. You like get annoyed with things. Like, all right, Nolan, thanks.
I'm sorry.
It's all good.
It's not my fault. You're a noob.
I guess so.
Ding.
Yeah, ding. Apparently,
we're keeping in the ding.
Yes.
So if you heard that ding, it's a great.
Nolan's just going to prolong this.
Yeah, it's a great ding. I've never heard a better ding in my life.
I think it was an idea.
Exactly. I just had a thought.
Time to move on to 32, I think.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah. The bird, the falcon, Koya, has landed in the barn. Leo has come to save Splinter and the gang. The first time he has called Shredder. He called Shredder only Koya's master, not his. He gets into the fight together with Splinter, Donnie, and Mikey. Leo does get hurt in his shoulder, but then throws your favorite word. What does he throw?
Shuriken.
A shuriken. Yeah, nice. And gets the Falcon kind of in the neck or throat area. Raphael is cornering Alopex and says that she didn't call anyone. and that then at that very moment, the assassins set off the explosion. Smoke's cloud inside. One's about to attack Raphael, and Alapex actually saves him. He admits that he was wrong about Alapex when she said that she basically froze, that she thought that the assassins were after her and there to kill her, and says she was wrong about him, and kind of slinks away at this moment.
I'm going to be honest, Raph really irritated me in this. I get why he's so questioning of her, but I just was like, bruh.
It's a little much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a little outnumbered here.
Yeah, this is not the time.
No. And it would be something else if she stayed pretty guarded, right? But ultimately, she was the first one he fooled, right?
Yeah.
And so I think about that. Not that it gives him more excuse, but that's what I think about. We have just a little bit more in this issue. April and Casey are at the dinner table with April's mother, Elizabeth. I'm going to say it until I remember it. And that's when they hear the explosion.
Yeah.
Back at the barn, they defeat the assassins, but Koya defeats Leo and Splinter. Raphael attacks, takes him down. April, Casey, and Elizabeth show up and get to the barn just as Koya has overtaken Raphael and kind of crash through the door, and throwing Raphael aside, starts to head towards April's mother, and we find out why this motorcycle is so important, because Mikey flies in on a motorcycle and takes him out.
It was so cool.
It was pretty cool.
I love
it. Felt like a movie moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely did. And that it was Mikey, right?
Yeah.
Leo's standing over Koya, saying that they need to finish their business. And it was a very intense moment. I'm not really doing it justice by explaining it. You really have to see the comic and how they did it. But it did feel like a movie moment, so to say, where Leo looks like he's about to behead Koya, frankly, and he decides to sheath his katana, reaches in and pulls the shuriken from his neck, saying that if he stays, he bleeds out. He has about an hour. So Koya decides to leave, saying that they will return someday, that his eyes can see for miles. April's mom comes to terms with the mutants that are in front of her.
Yeah.
Doesn't faint. Nice little callback to that. And the gang decides that they need to leave the country, that is not really a country, and go back to New York. And they leave Alapex behind, which is kind of interesting. April's mother...
well, she sort of runs off, doesn't she?
Well, that's what I mean. She slinks away, but they didn't go after her. They didn't be like, where's Alapex?
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. And that's kind of the last we hear of her for a while here. So April's mother does slip the mutagen, which is, by the way, they make this interesting distinction here that this is the healing power of the ooze. So it's not like straight mutagen ooze. It's just the healing power.
Yeah.
And they only have enough for one thing. And so they decided to use it on her father.
I was convinced that when April's mom, Elizabeth decided to go with them, like was insisted on going with them, I was sure that it was going to set up like the Foot taking her dad or something.
Right.
But it didn't. I'm glad it didn't.
Sure.
I was going to find that annoying, but...
and so after drinking this, like, distilled ooze, so to say, in his tea, he does get up and he's cured magically.
It was like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
A little bit, yeah.
Where the grandpa's just, like, magically is better.
That is true, yeah. So really funny in-world kind of moment, having grown up in Connecticut. I happen to know that they took the Merritt Parkway from Massachusetts because they show a in-world real exit sign on the Merritt Parkway. They go by exit 59, which is the Woodbridge and New Haven exit, which incidentally is the same exit I would drive an hour and a half to for a sports team that I was on. It happens to be right after a tunnel. So it was just very funny to see that depicted in here. I sent this to my family and everything because obviously we grew up going by that a lot. So to see Northampton, to see that particular exit sign, so to say, to know that they are taking a road that I've done hundreds of times was just kind of on a personal note, kind of cool. But what'd you think of that issue? Big old fight scene.
I enjoyed the issue. I am kind of bummed that the stuff at the farm didn't last a little longer.
Yeah.
I would have liked a couple more issues, but I did like how it ultimately all paid off. I do wish there would have been more questioning about where Alopex was from everyone else, but other than that, yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm not exactly thrilled about how Alopex sort of ended for right now. I thought that there was that little bit of progress going. Even if there was a setback with Raphael, that could have been a story point along the progress, so to say, that like you're not infallible, mistakes are made, that happens. Like they could have just used that kind of thing. But nobody questions where's Alopex.
Yeah.
Like no one. And I thought that was just very strange.
Leah, I'm
like
fine.
even Mikey.
Mikey, I could see Mikey and Donnie I'm fine with not mentioning, but like Leo, who defended her earlier,
Right.
and Splinter, who trusted Leo and Alopex. They should have said something.
Yeah. So, very odd, but I mean, we're gonna see her again. Yeah. I mean, that's what I trust, anyways. So,
she's the cover of one of the future volumes. Spoiler alert.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. We go back into the Utrom Empire for issue 3. Starts out as years ago. Krang announces a loss of the war and a need to escape the Earth. Krang explains the ooze to Quanon, but he refuses to leave. So basically, he has this ooze, is going to keep them in stasis while he terraforms the Earth. Then he'll release them. Then everybody will be happy. We'll have new neutronium. That's his whole evil plan because he's an evil guy.
Evil plan for an evil guy.
That's it. So he tries to explain this to his father that he needs to go, but Conan refuses to leave. The war is never over. All this stuff. And so he leaves him behind. The Fugitoid is wondering if he should end himself still. He gets imprisoned again, trying to get a message out. We don't know if he made it out or not. Krang makes it back inside from the hurricane, which I thought was a really interesting moment. He makes it back in, like tired, weak, and everything. Tells everyone to get out and just to sit with the race that he just saved and that he's going to ultimately save. Kind of like brings that back a little bit.
This is my best work. Hurricane, more like Hurricane.
Wow.
Oh,
That's it.
I'm proud of that. I just thought of it right off the top of my head.
Solid.
Yeah, that's just how I am.
You should try not
like
to beat that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Utroms go back into stasis, ends up saving them. Stockman hears that the Fugitoid is back somehow. And he goes to destroy him, but when he walks in, this was an interesting twist. He walks in and sees that the Fugitoid is unbound, telling Krang that Fugitoid and Stockman actually work together to save the Utroms. There's an interesting point where he's like, I think he's going to get the hint, so to say, that this is our only way out. The Fugitoid did send out a message successfully, and Donnie receives it, and it's instructions to create a teleport to Burndown Island. But the twist at the end of Utrom 3 is Karai also received the message.
Oh, yeah. That was the thing that happened.
Yeah, that happened. I think this is exactly your point, right? Like, these Utrom, the history of Utrom and everything like that, take it or leave it, interesting. I think they're laying the groundwork for Zog or Triceratons, like these little things happening, these things, but it does propel a story forward. You do want to read these issues to continue the overall story.
I almost feel like these issues, I'm sure they were written by someone else, I don't know for sure, but I almost feel like these issues could have just been combined with the main issues and just had it be like it go back and forth from the Turtles to Krang and what's going on with them. Sure. But It's fine. It's
Makes
not
sense.
the end of the world.
Yeah. Now we hop into the 2014 annual.
Yay.
Ta-da.
Another issue with Kevin Eastman on the art.
Yes.
And it didn't work for me again.
It did. You're not it. That's not it.
I don't think he's a bad artist. I just don't think he tonally fits with this run.
I could hear that.
And especially when it becomes black and white, spoiler alert, since they didn't have their distinct weapons, they had sort of kind of like it, but I could not tell.
I mean, there was a lot to not be able to discern.
Yeah, I could not tell which turtle was which.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was exactly important for the story, but I couldn't tell who they were fighting, how they were fighting them, like those kind of things, for sure.
Yeah, it was. You know what? My opinion on this issue before you explain
the free opinion.
Yeah, free opinion.
I thought we had a good thing going.
Yeah.
I thought we had a pattern, but it's okay.
Yeah. And we'll go back to it for next time. But this issue, we're pre-opinion. I enjoyed it, but it went on too long.
Oh, for sure. Like, I found myself flipping, like, how many more pages I have? How many more pages?
Yeah. I was like, I'm enjoying this. And then I was like, okay, I was enjoying this, but you're in...
So what's interesting about this, let me go through this. Let's talk about it real quick.
Let's go back to our
regular programming.
Yeah, you need to stop going on tangents, Chris. Jeez.
Oh, I'm the worst, man. I'm the worst. I think this whole annual is a tangent anyway, so it's thematically working. But but the gang does arrive in New York City. They're looking for a new hideout, and at that point, apparently Casey's like, you want to know what? We're going to go on a date to a hockey game, April. So that's what they're off doing. Mikey and Donnie plan a prank on Raphael. Splinter warns them that might not be a good idea, but Raphael and Leo happen to walk in at the same time. And what looks like the prank actually ends up being a time-traveling Rennet, who has a history, I think Rennet Cerebus is the name in the Mirage, and I think she's like issue 8 or 9 or something like that.
Yeah, I know
the Mirage,
but I figured she was a callback to something.
Yes, she has some pretty cool figures too. There's like a red Rennet, and there's like a blue Rennet. It's kind of neat. In the new NECA like Mirage kind of esque line. In any event, she pops out of nowhere. Explain that she thought of the turtles for a super fight, basically. The turtles are confused as they've never met before. I summarized a lot of her rambling, basically, here, because she basically has met them, but in another time, in another place, but she can never tell where she lands, if they've met before, if they've not. It's all rambling.
If you've ever seen Doctor Who, it's basically how...
It did feel like that.
It's basically... What's her name? River Song and the Doctor. So if you've ever seen Doctor.
And if you've ever seen the third Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, she is using a scepter for time travel.
Yep. Which
is definitely out of the samurai turtles, so to say. So turtles get zapped into time travel. Splinter walks out, sees them not there, doesn't know what's going on.
Well, he's not really concerned about it. He
thinks it's the prank.
Yeah, they're just like, he kind of gets annoyed that they aren't doing what they need to do.
Right. And he's about to send them on a run, which I thought was funny. Let's just go out for a run in the broad daylight. But all right, so they get zapped into time travel. And they arrive minutes before the cages are shut. And you don't know really what that is. They're thrown into a cage to apparently fight the next day. And this is the first appearance of Balthazar, who is in the cage with them. And he explains that every 12 cycles, the Interdimensional Council holds fights. Winners fight again. Losers go to a slave camp like dimension. So before they know it, they're thrown into fighting. The turtles really don't want to fight, but knows that they'll lose if they don't, which is a theme of this whole volume of this whole series in a lot of ways, I will say. Yeah. They do end up winning. They're told to return to their cages to fight again. They try to convince Balthazar to rise against the council. The Interdimensional Council says that they can't. Rennet also wants to go against the council. Rangar's trying to convince Balthazar to discuss joining forces.
Balthazar's whole point is it felt like just to make it so the turtles learn about Cowabunga and Booyakasha.
Well, he did say at one point, did he just say Cowabunga? I mean, but because they've said it before, right?
I don't know. There was that.
Oh, the
piece of
T-shirt.
but I don't know. But like, it just sort of felt like that character's whole point was like, here, turtles, use Booyakasha eventually in.
Well, I'm gonna get to the whole point of this issue. I have a theory at the end of this. So, Balthazar gets attacked in the cage and injured because he's like one of the best warriors they've ever seen. They're then all thrown into fight again, and it appears that one of the warriors is a Triceraton, or maybe Zog, or just a Triceraton. They end up winning the battle, and the council wants them to lose, so they send in more and more warriors, and that's when the fight seems to be unfair, and it seems to turn the whole crowd, which I thought was an interesting moment myself. And then Rennet jumps in to help. The council decides to end the games. They zap the turtles back. Splinter doesn't know the difference, but Leo lands on the prank, falls into the water. He laughs, and then Splinter pushes them all in, which I thought was really interesting. And Mikey says, I wonder where Rennet is now. And apparently it's Rennet and Balthazar hopping to prehistoric times or something like that.
Yeah, at that point, I was like, okay, that was a fun ending where Leo goes the prank, and then Splinter pushes them in. That was a lot of fun. Yes. And then when Mikey said that and it cut to them, I was like, and it's over. Just move on.
Yeah, that's all you needed. Just don't go past the lead. Now, here's my thing though. So kind of what I was talking about introducing the Triceratons as a potential, we're going to team up with the Triceratons to take on Krang later. This is more people and more characters that they might be able to call on later to help them. Balthazar being one of them. The Triceratons are there again. Even Rennet. So, and Rennet is now, if you think about Rennet and Kitsune, sort of, and Shen really being another iteration of this bigger than Earth, or a neutrino probably, but just something outside of Earth that maybe even Donnie doesn't understand, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't know what's going on. And so that's the expanding of the universe that I was talking about at the beginning of this episode. And yeah, because I think this lays the groundwork for something bigger to come. It was a little tough of a read for me, and the story wasn't all there for me, but I can appreciate that this is for later.
I like I said, I enjoyed the issue. It just went on too long.
Right.
And sort of what you said, it sort of reminds me of, there's an episode of The Walking Dead where they introduce some big things a few episodes before they really introduce stuff. So it's groundwork, but when you're watching it, you're just like,
I guess I got to go through this.
Yeah, this is a thing where things are happening.
Yes. So let's hop into issue 33 here. So the Turtles stop a bank robbery while out on patrol. I thought that was pretty cool to see. But then across town, can't stop them all. Bebop and Rocksteady take down an armored truck for Hun. And Shredder, apparently, they bring all the money from their armored truck to Shredder. Shredder wants to talk to Hun about Casey specifically. Casey and April are now living together, apparently. Casey leaves to go check on Angel. There was some moments about Casey and April trying to talk about a normal life of some sort. April wanting to go back to school and wanting Casey to go back to school. That felt a little weird to me because it's there's a lot of bigger things going on than going to school.
I was fine with her wanting to go back to school,
right?
But I mean, her insistence on him going back to school, I get that she cares about him and wants him to have a good education, but at the same time, it's with everything going on, I mean, give him a break.
Right, right.
I thought they were staying with the Turtles.
Did they all move in?
That was my assumption. Could be wrong.
Okay.
That was just my assumption.
Okay. I couldn't quite tell. You have Donnie and Leo arrive just as Casey's leaving. Casey wants we were just saying that April wants Casey to go back to school. And Hun shows up at the Scar Bray, which is where Casey was heading to catch up with Angel. Hun is looking for Angel and Casey. Crazy random happenstance, as Dr. Horrible would say. Finds out Shredder stabbed Casey. This is where he actually finds that out from Brooklyn behind the bar there, I think his name is. It cuts to a conversation with Shredder where Shredder tells Hun to get Casey to join the Foot or he will be killed. And that's when we cut back to Scar Bray and Angel steps in to save her father from being hurt by Hun. Hun throws him across the bar. A bar fight ensues. Of course, Hun is going to win. He's looking for Casey, and that's when Casey shows up. And he tries to convince him to join the Foot. Casey's writing here, I think, is really interesting. Not only does he refuse, but he refuses in a way that really cuts into Hun. Hun offers him cash even to leave everything behind. I thought that was an interesting moment as well. And Casey even considers it for a second. But I wrote down this quote saying that Casey says, "What kind of real man chooses a scumbag like Shredder over his own son?" And that ends issue 33. And so kind of to reiterate that point, I actually think how Casey was written packs a bigger punch than Casey's actual punches. I almost feel like they cut deeper into Hun and do more damage emotionally, so to say, than Casey ever could to Hun.
Yeah.
But yeah, short issue. Overall, your thoughts?
I thought it was a good issue. I liked how Mikey kind of enjoyed being a superhero. Well, not a superhero, but just a hero helping people on the street at the beginning. And then, the stuff with April was kind of annoying. It wasn't the worst, but...
we didn't even talk about April's new do. I don't know which issue that was, but April all of a sudden has a pixie cut. Has short hair out of nowhere, and they don't even recognize her for a second. And just this, they definitely are leaning into Casey and April are a thing, so to say. I don't know which volume it is, but I did pick up the single issues of the Casey and April series. They have their own side series and whatnot. I'm not sure how well it did based on the resale value of those series, if that makes sense.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Sure, I agree. But I guess that they're not sought after is what I mean to say. But yeah, at this point, all that to say, at this point, they've gone on dates, they've had these experiences, they're really leaning into them being an item.
Yeah,
I think it was Mikey has said are those two a thing now or something like that?
Yeah, somewhere.
Yeah. So we're gonna hop into issue 34. So Donnie and April bring Angel and Casey to Harold's lab. There is an interesting moment here where Donnie sort of seems to have a crush on Angel of some sort a little bit. I think they were kind of trying to write that a little bit. But Casey seems to be a little bit on edge from his run-in with Hun. And they try to get all three of them really go into the lab, Angel, Casey, and Donnie, and they try to get Harold to help with the Fugitoid teleportation portal, but he doesn't want to, of course, because Harold only really cares about himself in some regards. Angel starts poking around, and she ends up finding the exoskeleton suit, and Harold calls Angel a nobody or preschooler or whatnot. Really doesn't like her at first.
I think it's preschool and then later. No.
Yeah, something like that. And they end up tripping over, she ends up finding an exoskeleton suit that Harold has upgraded the technology from the gravitational gauntlet thing. And that is when they find out what I wrote down, what looks like Metalhead, android. We cut to Leo and Splinter actually strategizing in the sewers and debating whether the Technodrome or Shredder is the bigger threat at the moment. They jump back to the lab, and Harold is explaining that Metalhead was modeled after a turtle based on it's stealth and I think agility. It was a couple of different things. They decide to test run it, and in the middle it becomes sentient and breaks the controller right there, and decides to attack April because he used StockGen employee database apparently, and April is wanted as far as StockGen is concerned. And so Angel, let's see here. I lost my notes here. Sorry about that.
Apology not accepted.
I didn't ask you.
You didn't ask anybody.
I was asking the audience, and they said it was okay. So
I didn't hear them say that.
So Metalhead attacks April. Donnie and Angel try to fight it. And it is at this point Angel has like one of the smartest ideas she's ever had so far to date, and that is she gets Metalhead to sort of inadvertently, but on purpose, break the glass that holds the exoskeleton suit, and she puts it on and uses that to defeat Metalhead. And this is what impresses Harold, because she seems to be a natural all of a sudden with all of this technology stuff, I think is what they said. This ends with a really weird cutscene, by the way. So that feels like the end of the episode, but the issue rather. But we have 2 pages where we cut to this woman. Her name's Lindsay, talking to her mom about the job market after the StockGen thing. Nobody wants scientists. And she drops her keys, and when she looks up, there is a Slash and Hobb standing there offering her a job. So if you were wondering where Hobb and Slash were, that's where they were.
They were searching for an employee.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough market out there.
Yeah.
So, issue 34. What are your thoughts?
I really liked it. I thought I think the dynamic with Harold, he's super goofy character. I like how Metalhead talked like him, like set up truce and all that.
That was pretty funny. Truce. Yeah.
I thought the Metalhead stuff was a lot of fun, and I thought it was interesting him putting in all the names from StockGen.
Right.
And I thought it was fun how Donnie was kind of creeped out by him making sort of a robot version of him.
Like an android turtle.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to see Harold kind of go from like, get out of my lab, like get off my lawn with Angel, to sort of like respecting her and what she was able to do. I thought that was kind of interesting, and we see more of that in issue 35.
We're getting near the end here.
We're getting there.
Only
3 left. Yeah. Mikey and Raphael are getting pizza from Woody, so that was great to see, I thought. And debating on whether they should be meeting with Hobb and Slash. And they get there and they find that Hobb and Slash have this woman hostage. And we cut to Casey visiting his mother's grave at the cemetery, and having a flashback about getting the hockey scholarship and apologizing for not making it through school and everything to his mother. And that is when Hun shows up. I will say, the jumping back and forth and the connecting lines between the jumping, so to say, these are like page by page. So as I'm going back and forth here, just know, once again, reads better than I'm explaining it. But that's when Hun shows up. We jump back to Mikey and Raph.
To be clear, he shows up in modern time, not in the flashback.
Correct. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. So he shows up in the cemetery. We jump to Mikey and Raph showing up to Hobb. Slash opens the door and kind of plows through it, excited to see Mikey. I think this is like the friendship we didn't know we needed.
Yeah.
Really cool. They see the woman tied up and a bird with a gun named Pete. Yeah, Pigeon
Hi,
Pete.
I'm Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete. Over and over again. The Hun, flashback to the cemetery. We have the Hun and Foot fighting Casey, starting with the Foot fighting Casey. We then see Hobb back at the lab. Says that he kidnapped Lindsay, the scientist, to help with the mutant army that he wants to build. Raph sets her free, and Hobb reveals that he has Splinter's blood. And you can see that Lindsay, the scientist, takes an immediate interest in that. Casey is down and out. He's beaten down. He spit a tooth out at one point. Hun is about to kill his own son. And out of nowhere, he gets hit with a shuriken and electrocuted. Which makes me wonder if Casey also got electrocuted, but I'm not sure. And nobody threw the shuriken and jumps in. And nobody is a code name for Angel in the exoskeleton suit that she used before. Harold is on comms, and apparently it was only supposed to be a long-range comms test, but Angel decided to do what she wanted. And we jump back to Lindsay being impressed that Hobb has the Splinter's blood and reveals that this blood could finish the test and prove her theories and scientific theories correct. But that she has to test this on Slash. And I thought this was a very interesting moment where Hobb draws an absolute line for Slash because he promised Slash that there would be no more pain. Hobb refuses those tests to happen, but then Slash jumps in and says one of the best lines that Slash could say is that he wants to be a hero like Mikey. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
So Slash takes it, takes that dose of blood. The point being that was explained is that this experiment could basically help Slash's mutation finish. That the reason Slash was the way he was is because the mutation was never fully baked, so to say, and they couldn't figure out how to complete it. And Lindsay theorized that Splinter's blood could be the last missing piece. So at first it seems like it's not going to work. He throws Mikey across the room. That sets off Raph. And Slash is about to kill Raph before Hobb shocks him. And it seems to work. And Slash basically comes to and says, I'm good. There's no more pain. And he even sounds different.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting, the difference in the speech bubbles, so to say. Like they kind of changed the style of how he talked in the speech bubbles a little bit.
I would have to.
Yeah, just kind of like how his was always black with white and kind of like spiky, so to say. And now these are more like rounded, like proper speech bubbles. I thought that was kind of interesting. We jump back to Angel and Casey have escaped the cemetery after Angel fought with Hobb and got them out. And I thought it was an interesting moment. Angel trying to tell Casey to rise above all the family drama, so to say, with his father, and that he's never as alone as he thinks. Thought that was an interesting parallel to like Leo's story and even Donnie's.
Yeah.
So I'll pause there. We got two more.
I thought it was in this issue, maybe it's next issue, where Casey goes and finds April's parents. Is that next issue?
Oh, that I think that is the next issue.
Okay.
If you want me to just move on,
it's fine. It's
okay.
fine.
If you want me to move on, you can just say so.
It was a good issue. I like Slash's relationship with Mikey, and I hope that even through his change, they still have that relationship.
I agree.
I think it's a little unrealistic. Not that it has to be realistic in a Turtles book, but that I don't remember her name. Lindsay, is that it?
Yeah.
That she would just immediately be okay with after being kidnapped.
Yeah, she was just fine with it.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
But it's fine.
Yeah.
Good issue.
Move on. But there was a funny line in there though where he says that he should they should do the tests on Pigeon Pete or whatever, and he says something about like we already tried that and look how far it got. Like basically saying like New York City pigeons are stupid.
Yeah.
By the way, something interesting. As I was reading this, they say we need to go back to New York, and we're recording this in Fort Wayne, Indiana. If you don't live in the Northeast or haven't lived in New York or New England even, when people say I'm going to New York, they typically mean New York City, or I'm going to the city. And I found that as I left New England and I left the Northeast, like that can be really confusing to people here. So to say, I'll say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to the city next weekend" or something like that, and they'll be like, "What city?" I'm like, in my brain, that was the only city, really, because you weren't going to Boston, you wouldn't say that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There's some points in here where they say they're going back to New York. It's like, well, New York's a state, not a city, but in their context, this makes sense. So cool. Let me get on to I Digress. Full of tangents, full of side issues, but we got two more. So we do start out with Leo and Splinter still disagreeing on which threat they should handle first. We hop to April's parents insisting on taking Casey in to help with his injuries.
Yeah, because Casey almost attacked them, but then
didn't know who was in the second time around.
Yeah, because they couldn't get in because April had changed the lock.
But it was Casey's idea to change the lock or something.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
they had a key hidden.
Yeah. So we then Leo and Splinter discuss Shen's dream visits. I thought that was a really touching moment. Splinter's promise, and they were talking about Splinter's promise to Shen to not seek revenge on Shredder. But Splinter explains that not only was this promise made a lifetime ago, his ultimate promise was to protect him and his brothers. So it was kind of interesting for him to rationalize that in some ways. And it's at this point, the lights go completely out and they seem to be frozen. This opening part was a little bit weird to me. And speaking of, I skipped the very weird introductory page of this issue. That seems to be old-timey and back maybe in the plague, that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, I'll just take it and I'll move on. But we find out why, and that is because when the lights turn back on, not only are they frozen, both Leo and Splinter, Leo cannot talk, it seems, and cannot hear, but Splinter can. And this is the introduction of the Rat King.
Yep.
The Rat King, which he takes on a completely different persona than the Rat King of, say, the cartoon.
Yeah.
Right? I actually just picked up a figure of the old Rat King, oddly enough. But yeah, takes on a completely different persona and purpose. This next chunk, so to say, of this issue is really hard to summarize because the Rat King, it felt like a movie. Like it felt like almost, you've said it before, so it's in my head, but the Willy Wonka, like the tunnel scene where like everything's swirling and everything, but like Willy Wonka's just sitting there talking like normally while everybody's going, nuts,
Or even it sort of kind of reminded me of the scene in Avengers Age of Ultron, where Scarlet Witch messes with the mind of the Avengers.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. It honestly, probably the easiest way to explain it would be to just explain the point of it.
And that's kind of where I'm going with it. So Splinter starts asking why they are there. The Rat King explains that they are in his home, the Rat King's home, which is a thin place, as the Celts call it. Oddly enough, I've actually heard of this before, and this is a true thing, like a mythology, so to say. And it's a thin place is a place between worlds that can't be explained or something like that. I actually came across it in another podcast fairly recently. So it was interesting to hear that brought up here. Then, so another iteration, again, of these other dimensions, these other planes of existence, so to say. And so I feel like that's what they're building, to. Rat King goes on to explain that the rats have been throughout time planning everything, playing chess, so to say, interdimensionally. They then sort of thrust them into some kind of portal in a very, very like skin crawling way. And that is that the rats overtake Leo and Splinter, thrust them into a portal. And it seems to be Splinter's turn first, quote unquote. And all this is happening while the Rat King is kind of speaking in rhymes, and Splinter is facing off against Dark Leo. This culminates in him Splinter insisting that he will end their enemies to protect his son. We then immediately kind of flip the scene. Rat King flips the scene, and now it's Leo's turn to sort of confront his biggest problem, so to say. And now Leo is all of a sudden free, apparently, and facing an oversized Splinter. And Leo ultimately realizes what is happening and overcomes it, saying that he will not be brainwashed again. And he attacks the Rat King, and just as the sword kind of hits, his head, the Rat King vanishes for a moment, and they're back at home all of a sudden. And Splinter has a wound.
Yeah, because Leo cut him.
Because Leo cut him in that fight defensively, not to hurt, but he didn't think it was actually Splinter, his father.
Yeah.
Because it looked like a monster. Because his father would never attack him. Then they're just relieved that Leo didn't get brainwashed again. It's okay about the arm, but then the Rat King comes back and says that Leo is more knight than pawn, and that they will forget him in a moment, but that he also might return someday in the future.
Well, he's like, you'll forget me, but I won't soon forget you.
Right. Throughout this, in the rhymes and whatnot, there's references to his sister, and you put together that the Rat King's sister is Kitsune.
Yeah.
And
he says he's
his sister's work or something like that.
The stench of his sister's work.
Yes, the stench of his sister, reeks of his sister's work.
Yeah.
They then do seem to forget where Splinter got his wound from completely. Yeah. But this ends with Shredder meeting Krang on the ship.
Sorry, you forgot Kitsune, is that it?
Kitsune, yeah.
She gets in contact with Alopex.
Funny story. That is the third line in my summarizing of issue 37.
Is it really 37?
Yeah, it is. Yes. Yes.
What the heck?
This guy.
I could have swore.
Man, he's just
I should.
You're doing the opposite of burying the lead.
Yeah.
But that issue I thought was a really interesting introduction to the Rat King. It was very disorienting and hard to keep up with, but I do think that was intentional, and I can swallow that.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was very interesting, very interesting world building, and having him be the sister of Kitsune is very interesting new lore. I did kind of find it annoying, in the dream, it just felt like we were retreading old ground that we had been exploring. I think,
but it felt like a test, though. Ultimately, right?
Yeah,
that's what was interesting to me.
It was, yeah, and it shows that Leo really has overcome it. But I just felt like we were rehashing old ground that we had literally just dealt with. But
for sure,
I thought it was very interesting, and I'm very interested to see where they go with Rat King eventually.
Right. I mean, I don't think this spoils much, but a more recent series is the Armageddon game, and the Rat King is across that whole game. So
no, I didn't know that.
He's across all the covers and things like that. I didn't know that was the Rat King until this issue, frankly, because I always thought of the Rat King like the classic Rat King, so to say. But when he mentions a chess game and a pawn and a knight, and now there's a series called the Armageddon game, I'm like, okay, this seems interesting.
I was gonna say, those characters, Kitsune and Rat King, kind of remind me of, I can't remember their names. They're not the elders, but the Collector and that one character. I can't remember the character's name. But anyway, in the Marvel universe, where they're siblings and they're kind of just they're not elders. I forget what they're called. If you know what I'm talking about. It reminded me of that.
And if you don't know,
then
now you know.
Sort of. Well, really, you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You still don't know.
Yeah.
Let's crank out this last issue here. We'll talk. We'll wrap things up. So it's revealed that Krang and
Wrap
Shredder.
things up.
Whoa! Look at this guy. Leave a comment below if of your favorite Nolanism from this episode. So issue 37, it's revealed that Krang and Shredder have met before about 300 years ago.
Well, we do see that. Last volume?
Last issue, you mean? Oh.
No, last
yes,
volume we
yes,
did. Or
yes.
the volume before that.
Yes, but they have met in person now.
Yeah.
And the reason they're getting together is that Shredder is offering Krang protection over Burn now. We jump to Kitsune appearing to Alapex.
Wow.
Telling her to return. Yeah, I don't know who could have told us about that before. And Shredder is basically proposing an alliance with Krang. Not only, kind of the muscle, which typically in other iterations, Shredder has been the muscle for Krang, but also for scientific resources and combining. Eventually, Shredder says will lead to his rule. Krang rebukes that, says that it's no use, that Earth is going to be new Eutromium, and he's going to rule. So Krang refuses the deal and tries to kill Shredder. And it's at that point that he realizes there's a hologram in his head, and there's ninja tricks going on, and there's a speaker in the suit, and that Arukusaki is actually in one of the foot soldiers' suits, who jumps out the window and explodes a bomb on the deck of the ship.
That stuff I felt like was very much something that could only work in a comic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like, could you not tell that his voice was coming from over there?
Well, it seemed like there was a speaker, though. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, like a ventriloquist kind of thing. Yeah, like he's throwing his voice. And so Saki makes it out in a foot suit onto the deck of the ship. He exploded the bridge, so to say. He races to the helicopter, but Krang downs the helicopter with a missile. Saki is trapped on the deck by all the other Krang soldiers. And that is when Koya shows back up, but a new mutant named Bludgeon, a hammerhead shark.
Unrelated to the X-Men.
And unrelated to, like, street sharks.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Jumps onto the deck and starts handling all the soldiers. So they attack Trag and Granitor. And Krang's order basically is deal with them while I go deal with Saki. And they go back and forth. They have their tit for tat with their little, quips and whatnot. And just as Saki is about to end Krang, Koya pulls him out. And then Trag and Granitor actually pulls Krang through a teleport to Burn now as the ship is sinking. Bludgeon gets away and jumps in the water because, home. And this is where they say that the official war with Krang has begun, but realistically, they were always at war with Krang.
I thought it was interesting that Shredder was okay with her.
He said he would never, fault someone for initiative or something like that. Yeah, taking initiative or something. I thought that was interesting. This does have sort of whiffs, if this makes sense, because there is a moment at the end of 36 where Leo says, we have to take our greatest wound and make it into our strength or something like that. Sort of sets up a alliance with Shredder to take down Krang. That's how I kind of read this. And I know at some points they've worked together here and there when their interests align and whatnot, but that's what I started to get from this, but I have no idea.
Me neither.
Overall, this volume to me, compared to the other volumes, I really liked the climactic endings to the volumes. This has one. It doesn't feel like the ending of a 5-arc climax kind of thing, 5-issue arc or whatnot, or multiple issue arc. Felt like a lot of world building, a lot of world expanding. Some done really well, some not so well, but I think it'll pay off. But again, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, I love this volume. Like I said at the beginning, it's probably my favorite. I just like the kind of low-key nature of it, I guess.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Or it didn't feel as bombastic as the rest, and I
could hear that. Yeah, the action a little bit more subdued, but we're like expanding into other areas and things like that. So yeah, I'm super curious to see where this goes. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode of the Cowabunga Chronicles. This was Volume 4, Donatello on the front issue. And yeah, thanks again for listening. And we'll leave you with a Cowabunga. The Cowabunga Chronicles is sponsored by StockGen Laboratories, hosted by Chris and Nolan, and produced by the Arcade Comics. If you are interested in the TMNT IDW collection or pulling the new Jason Aaron TMNT series that releases July 10th, both are 20% off and include free bags and boards. Be sure to pull the series before final order cutoff only at the Arcade Comics on East State Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana.